Welcome to GS Channel, people, and today we will be talking about a voltmeters and a relays for car audio. So this is the small voltmeter that you can purchase from eBay. I'll put a link down. Only like £5. You can get a variety of voltmeters. You can have ones that have amperage and volts at the same time. You can get them round, you can get them square, you can get them all sorts of types. You can even get them in bass knobs, aftermarket bass knobs, and well, basically there's many varieties of voltmeters where you can possibly purchase. And the reason why would you want to install one of these in your car is to actually monitor the voltage drops that happens when bass kicks at its best, when it drains all that lovely power off your battery and your alternator or second battery or lithiums, or it's whatever you're using for it. So basically I'm going to be installing this. Oh Jesus fucking Christ! So I'm going to be installing this one in my red BMW 46. If you watched my channel before, you will see that I did install a single DIN head unit in there, and I've redone the sound system because I had the Chinese head unit and all that sort of crap. Basically, it wasn't really working out for me properly how I wanted to, and basically I just went, right, I'm gonna go for proper head unit and stuff like that. So I've done an upgrade, and in a single DIN fascia was from my previous car. Basically I had one of these but in blue, so the readings were blue. This one is in red because it goes with the red car, and I will be installing this one instead of that one. And the reason why I'm installing that because I want to actually see the voltage drop at the battery, because I want to see how much of power is getting drained away and whether I need to look into getting a better battery, or I will be alright with whatever readings I'm gonna get, because I don't know yet. I've never actually put a multimeter on it or nothing when I'm basing. So, but there's quite a few places, locations where you can really install your voltmeter, and it's each to their own really, because you can either put it at the alternator, which will be reading the alternator output. You can put it at the battery, which I'm gonna be doing, so it will be reading the volts at the battery. So basically with the alternator putting in and amplifier draining out, so I will be putting it in that middle section really. And either you can put it at amplifier to read what's the loss in your cables, like voltage wise and blah blah blah. If you got crappy cables, you will have some resistance and stuff like that, and resistance is bad for car audio. It always knocks power off. It's same as if you would be talking for like impedance rise or box rise of the subwoofer, and basically you might have a 2000 watt RMS amplifier, but by the time the subwoofer takes away everything impedance rise, you might only be getting about 500-600 watt RMS coming out of that amplifier if you're lucky, or it depends. But that's completely different thing. But so like I said, you've got quite a few locations when you could attach this to, but you don't want it to really be on permanently, so you want it to go off. But in this example, let's say I've got this meter here, little voltmeter, and if I'm just gonna tap it my speaker wires, the wires there. So as you can see, it's reading 13.1 there, and let's see what it's going to read there. And it reads 13.4 at the capacitor. So this is really coming out of the capacitor, and it's reading already 13.1 instead of 13.4. So there you go, straight away. But let's see if I can. Right, I can. It doesn't matter. But really, it gives you an idea what sort of voltage you're standing at and what sort of voltage you're going to be getting from your system into your system, and that all depends on, basically that will depend on the capacity of your battery, of your alternator, and all the other electrical parts that are giving the electricity out. And the drop will be down to your subwoofer, down to the amplifier system, how powerful it is, how honestly there's 101 things that can affect the voltage drop. And to make this go off when you turn the ignition off, you need to use a relay. Well, I don't know, maybe you have something else that you can use, but I prefer using a relay, and I prefer hardwiring it into the car itself. So basically, ignition wire, I'm going to be taking it from the ignition. I won't be taking it from the amplifier feed, the remote wire from the head unit, because sometimes that will affect your amplifier. That might will be given that little buzzing noise, and that will just basically be annoying as hell. So what I'm going to be doing, I would prefer wire this into the fuse box, where you have empty slots, and one of them slots, I guarantee you, will be ignition activated. So just grab one of them, I don't know, fuse special holders, so you can put a fuse in there, so you fuse your circuit. Preferably you fuse the circuit, because you never know what can happen with the cable later on. You might get jammed, might get, I don't know, crack or whatever. It will short out, and that will cause fire. That will cause fire for your, to your car, to your vehicle, whatever you have. So one end goes to the ignition positive, so basically from the fuse box to one of these terminals, and other one goes to the ground. So you've got two more left here. So what you do is, let's say I'm going to be installing this at the battery. So one end, one cable goes all the way from the battery into here, and then this end, one of these ends, goes to the positive wire of your multimeter or voltmeter or whatever, and the negative wire obviously goes to the negative. And basically that's it. That's the whole process. So as soon as you put the ignition on, you will activate the relay, and the relay will turn on. Simple as that. Like, I don't know if you will be able to hear, but can you hear the click? Basically that's on, that's off, that's on, that's off, that's on, that's off. So basically that's what is going to happen in your car when you put your ignition on. So as soon as you put ignition on, this engages, and it brings up the proper voltage from the battery, because you run the whole run of wire from the battery, wherever it's located, to your relay. And that will give you the true measurement of the battery or alternator or amplifier or second row battery, second battery bank, or honestly there could be many possibilities. You could have 10 of these voltmeters, and honestly you could have all the different sort of readings. But I would never ever suggest it just wire it into like any electrical, like at the head unit or I don't know, it's not gonna work out like what you think it would possibly, because you might have some step down reducers somewhere in the car as well, so some things they're not gonna be reading fully even 14 volts when your car is on, because when the car is on it's supposed to be about 14.2 blah 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 volts. That's from the factory system. I could be wrong here, but in my BMWs, that's what I have. Like in my silver one, when I installed my previous blue multimeter, my reading was 14.2, 14.1 volts at standing, and obviously when the bass was kicking in, it was dropping down to like 12.5, which is safe really. You're not getting a lot of power, but you are not really killing your system if it's 12.5 12, as long as it doesn't go below 10 volts, or I would prefer 11, you're fine in a way, kind of thing. But if it's gonna drop that dramatically low, you've got to look into it. You're either gonna have to replace a battery, or you replace an alternator, or anything. But again, if you're installing a small system, you don't really have to worry about it. You can get these capacitors, like you will see what I might will show you if I will have to take my sub box out to run the wiring. But I have a capacitor in just to kind of compensate a little bit of a hard kick. It kind of did the job, but I don't know, it does help a little bit. The capacitor does help a little bit with like a headlight din. But when you have like 1K sub and you've got like 4-channel amplifier for all your doors, it's still going to be dimming. If you want to fight the dimming, if you want to fight the headlight dimming, you need to buy halogen bulbs like this HID kit, which will have a ballast, and this ballast will regulate all your headlight dimming, so you will not have it with the halogen stuff, but with the HID kit. But with a normal bulbs, you will have that dim regardless, really. If you're gonna crank it all the way up, like what I do sometimes, I've noticed that now it's getting darker, when I crank my volume all the way up, like 45s, when it's really nice and loud, I still see my headlights dim, regardless that I've got a capacitor. But what I'm saying about the capacitor, because sometimes you can get them with a voltmeter in already, so it's kind of in between amplifier and battery, so you will have some sort of reading, but unfortunately it's not going to be in front of you, like in your eye, like what I'm going to be installing in the dash. So you're not going to be able to see that in that environment. So that's why I am installing this, because I don't see my voltmeter at all, because it's just simply, it's took away my amplifier and everything. Well, the capacitor is took away, and the voltmeter that's on it, I just don't see it. So I'm installing this one, and it's quite pretty simple, straightforward. If you know your kind of electrics, one wire goes in, feeds in, blah blah blah. So, but I think that's really it. There's nothing much that I can add on. What will you need? I will be using like these crimp blade blade terminals for the blade terminals, so it will be simple and easy for me. They'll just slide on and will be nice and protected and everything. So, and I'll just put it away somewhere, and I'll forget about it. What else? I don't think there's anything else more to add to it for the time being. If there is going to be something, I will add to it really, but what I'm going to be doing now is I'm just going to go ahead and start installing all the wires and take my head unit out. Well, basically take the fascia out, blah blah blah, so I can get to the old voltmeter, so I can take that one out, put a new one in, and obviously then I'll be running all the cables and all that sort of stuff. Obviously I will show you where you can tap in the glove, in the fuse box in the BMW E46, but it's basically going to be exactly the same for any other maker car, so it's really kind of a overall guideline what you could possibly do to install one of these. And like I said, it's entirely up to you where you want to install this and what readings you want to get. So for example, if you want to know what's going to be at the amplifier voltage, you just run this cable, red cable, well not this cable, but you've got a cable straight away from the amplifier into the first pin, and then from the second pin to here, and that will give you the reading of the amplifier. The same story for the alternator, battery, head unit if you want to know, capacitor or battery bank. So that's what it is basically, really. So I'm gonna go set this all up. I'm gonna start on, I'll just do it all in time lapse. If I've got something to say, I will add on to, but I'm gonna do it all in time lapse. I'm gonna take my dash apart, get my head unit out, take the bottom part of my plastics off so I can run the wiring, and obviously then I will be running the cable all the way back to the battery, because the battery in BMW is in the back in the E46. So I've got quite a things to do, and that's it. Let me get enough talking, let's get to working.
Lost in the darkness and I want no more. My dreams are all fading away. The fire is burning, but deep down I know that wanting it drives me insane. I need you to come back, I can't let you go. I look at the stars and I pray I'm gonna be there.
Getting down to the fuse box. So you would basically do exactly the same. So you're starting from the fuse box. Basically, I already know where my remote wire is, because I've got the light in the back, which is ignition activated. Basically, I'm just gonna go for the same, and I'm just gonna split it out, and this is my fuse block, like what I said. You'll have to find a specific one for your one, because you've got different sizes. You got big ones, micro ones, nano ones. There's quite a few of them, and all you do is you basically just push it in, and that's it. Just make sure that it shuts. Yeah. And I've used the 2 ampere fuse. I believe this should be more than enough for what it's ever going to be using, and if it shorts out it's just going to pop quite easily. But if it is going to be causing any trouble, I'm going to put a 5 ampere one. But 2 ampere should be just fine. Also, how do you find which one is the ignition on? So what you do is you find the empty slots, then put your positive terminal of the multimeter in it and find the good ground, touch it down, then just turn the ignition key on. See if you get any power. You can either have a permanent life or it's going to be ignition, so just go through and find it. You'll find that it's not going to be hard at all. So from now on, I've got this wire, I've got a ground, so I'm going to run ground and the positive wire to the thing all the way back into the under the steering wheel. That's where the relay is going to be located, and from there I'll have wires going in for the voltmeter here. This one will be soldering some wires here, and then I'll have a wire that will go all the way around, which I'll show later on. But at the moment I'm gonna install all this cabling, get it all the way across there, feed it through, and after that I will be installing the relay and running the cable all the way back to the battery. So I've got quite a few things to do, and that's it for the time being. Let me get cracking. Also, when you install your ground cable, or whatever you want to call it, negative terminal or chassis, whatever, make sure that you use some sandpaper and clean up the area that you're going to be putting it on, so you have no oxidation, no rust, no nothing. That is going to give you the best connection, and it will last longer and will be better, rather than putting it onto the rust, which is going to have dodgy readings and it's just not going to work out. So clean your terminals, both of them, even the one that you're putting it on, just give it a little rub, because they are all coated. Just give it a little rub and you can see it becomes shiny as hell, and that is going to help you a lot. But I'm going to get cracking with this.
Before, give you my all if you stay. Don't go, 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 don't go, 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 in the dark. My calling is calling down, so I'm gonna find you in the dark. I'll find you in the dark. I'm gonna find you in the dark. My heart is beating, you're all I am left. I know you're feeling it too. The deeper I fall in, the harder it gets, and I don't know what to do. Remembering you in ways I can't forget, pictures I don't wanna lose. All of the stories, the time that we spent, you made all my dreams come true. Don't go, 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 don't go, go, go.
Right, so the main part has been all wired in already, so as you can see I've got only one pin left, which is for this cable. You might say, what the hell, why the hell do you have to have this thick of a cable? And really, that cable has got just a massive surround around it. It's maybe 2 mil square maximum, and you won't believe it, I ordered this cable with eBay claiming that it's 8 gauge cable, where my speaker cable is bloody thicker than that. So I thought, oh well, might as well use this fancy red wire. You get used to it with something. This will carry perfectly the current for what I needed for the voltmeter. So this is what it is. And obviously don't forget to put a fuse at the battery for this cable, because if it shortens out somewhere along the lines, this is gonna set on fire again. Like I'm saying, fuses, protection, everything has to be done. And I didn't have a 5 ampere fuse, so I've just stuck a 10 ampere fuse in here, and that should do. Either way it's gonna pop if it's gonna short out, so this is all cool. Basically now I've got to run this cable all the way along here, along there, and into the boot. And in the boot I think I might have to take this whole prettiness out to actually install it. So I'm not gonna film all this crap. I will basically film it once I've run all the cables and stuff. So I'll show you what's going on, what's where, and then after that I'm gonna put everything back together and probably will go out and do real-time testing. Let's get down to business.